I'm Dr. Alina, 30, female. I'm a surgical resident, which means my life is a blur of 30 sick, sour shifts, lukewarm coffee, and the constant humming pressure of saving lives. I live in a small apartment near the hospital, and my free time is mostly spent sleeping. My life is demanding, but it's mine, and I've worked incredibly hard for it. That's why I was so looking forward to our annual family vacation, a tradition my mother started before she passed away. I should have known it was too good to be true, especially when my family's idea of togetherness had started to feel more like an obligation I was paying for. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The family meeting was my father's idea. These meetings were always held at the expensive steakhouse he loved, the kind of place where the waiters wear white jackets and the water costs more than a sandwich. I arrived late, still in my scrubs, smelling faintly of antiseptic. At the table were my father, Robert, 56, his new wife, Karen, 50, and her son, my stepbrother, Mark, 27. My Aunt Linda, 54, my dad's sister, and my only real ally in the family, was also there, looking just as tired as I felt. Robert, who runs a small contracting business that always seems to be one big breakaway from success, was holding court. Karen, who hasn't worked a day since she married my dad, was sipping a martini, nodding at everything he said. Mark, a musician, whose primary gig was playing video games on my dad's couch, was tapping on his phone. "Elena, glad you could make it," Dad said, not looking up from his menu. We were just discussing the vacation. I felt a small spark of genuine excitement. Between my residency and paying off my med school loans, this trip was the one luxury I allowed myself. More importantly, it was the one time of year I felt connected to the memory of my mom. The vacation was funded by a trust she had set up, specifically designated for family enrichment and travel. "I've been clearing my rotation schedule," I said, sliding into the booth. "I can't wait for our vacation. 2 weeks of doing nothing sounds like heaven." A strange silence fell. Mark snickered into his phone. Karen shot him a look, but she was smiling too. Then my dad, Robert, replied with a laugh. It wasn't a warm, shared laugh. It was a short, sharp, dismissive bark. "Vacation. Oh, Alina, you've been working so hard, we didn't think you'd mind." My stomach tightened. "Mind what?" "Well," Karen chimed in, placing her hand on my father's arm. "With the economy the way it is, and Mark's music career really needing a kickstart, we decided to scale things back this year." "Scale back how?" I asked, looking at my dad. "We're just going to do something small, just the three of us," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "A little getaway, you understand, all those shifts. You probably just want to sleep anyway." The laughter from before now felt like a slap. "So the vacation is cancelled." "Not cancelled," Karen said sweetly, "just adjusted. Besides, the trust money is a little tight." Aunt Linda stiffened beside me. "Robert, that trust has very specific stipulations. It's for the whole family, and Alina is family." My dad said, his voice rising in fake enthusiasm, "And as family, I'm sure she understands that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the good of the group. Right, Alina?" I looked at the three of them, my father, my stepmother, and my stepbrother, all looking at me with variations of the same expectant, slightly greedy expression. They weren't asking, they were telling. The laughter hadn't been an accident. It was the sound of a punchline I was just now realizing I was the butt of. I just nodded, my voice gone, and stared at the water glass, the chill from the ice suddenly feeling like it was inside my chest. For the next 2 weeks, I buried myself in my work. It was easy to do. Residency is designed to consume you, and I let it. I took extra shifts, volunteered for complex cases, and spent my rare hours off sleeping in the hospital's on-call room. I told myself it was fine. I was saving money. I was advancing my career. But every time I checked my phone, a small, bitter feeling would rise in my throat. My dad would send texts to the family group chat. "Just finalizing some details for our little break. Don't work too hard, Alina," followed by a string of smiley face emojis. Karen would post vague statuses on her social media. "Sometimes you just need to get away from it all and recharge with the ones who really matter." #blessed. I ignored them. I told Aunt Linda I was fine, that I understood. "They need a break, Linda. It's fine." I'd say, the lie tasting like ash. "It's not fine, Alina." She'd reply, her voice tight with a frustration I couldn't let myself feel. "Your mother's money was meant for you too, not just for him, by him." She meant Mark, whose music career. seemed to involve buying expensive new guitars and synthesizer equipment that I knew my dad couldn't afford on his own. The day they were supposed to leave, I got one last text from my dad. "Have a great week at the hospital. We'll bring you back a souvenir." I was standing in the ER, 3 hours into a shift that had already seen a multi-car pileup and a critical heart patient. I looked at the text, at the winking emoji, and felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. I typed "have a safe trip" and shut my phone off. The hospital was chaos, a welcome distraction. I sutured, I diagnosed, I ran codes. For 24 hours, I didn't think about my family. I was Dr. Elena, the resident who could handle anything. When I finally stumbled out of the hospital the next evening, my feet aching and my brain fuzzy, I turned my phone back on. It buzzed with notifications, but I ignored them heading to my car. I just wanted to sleep for a week. As I drove, I stopped at a red light and glanced at my phone. A new notification had just popped up. It was a tag from one of Mark's friends on Instagram. My thumb clicked it before my brain could process what I was doing. The photo wasn't of a little getaway. It wasn't a budget trip to a cabin in the woods. It was Mark, grinning, holding a cocktail on a balcony. Behind him, the ocean was a brilliant, impossible blue. But it wasn't the ocean that made my blood run cold. It was the iconic, sail-shaped building in the background. They weren't in a cabin. They were in Dubai, and the caption read, "My bro Mark and his family living it up in the penthouse suite. Thanks for the hookup, Karen." My hands were shaking so badly I had to pull over into a parking lot. I clicked on Mark's profile. It was public, of course it was. He was an influencer. After all, the little getaway was a lie, a complete and utter fabrication. His entire Instagram feed was a highlight reel of their lavish trip, all posted in the last 24 hours. There was Karen posing in a designer dress in the lobby of a 7-star hotel. There was my father, Robert, beaming on a yacht, a glass of champagne in his hand. There was Mark, getting out of a rented Lamborghini. Post after post, first-class plane tickets, extravagant dinners at restaurants I couldn't even pronounce, shopping bags from brands I only saw in magazines, and the comments, "Wow, Mark, your music must be really paying off. Your mom is so generous, living the dream." I scrolled, a sick, hot feeling rising from my stomach. Then I saw it, a video. It was Karen, filming herself walking through a massive hotel suite. Just a little peek at our humble little vacation spot. She cooed to the camera. "Robert and I believe it's so important to invest in our children's happiness, and my baby Mark deserves the world for all his hard work." She panned the camera to Mark, who was lounging on a plush sofa. He raised his glass. "Shout out to my sister Elena. Someone's gotta pay for all this. Sucks you're stuck at the hospital, sis." He laughed. My father, sitting next to him, laughed too. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor mat. I sat in my car in the dark parking lot, the sound of their laughter echoing in my head. It was the same laugh from the steakhouse. "Sucks you're stuck at the hospital." He said it. He admitted it. They weren't just on vacation. They were on vacation using my money, the money from my mother's trust, the money that was supposed to be for all of us, the money I was told was too tight for me to join. I was funding my own exclusion. I was paying for them to mock me from halfway across the world. The exhaustion I'd felt moments before vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline so cold and sharp it almost hurt. I picked up my phone. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I drove home, my mind perfectly, terrifyingly clear. I called the hospital and told them I was taking a personal emergency leave. Then I called Aunt Linda. "Linda," I said, my voice even. "I need a lawyer, and I need everything you know about my mother's trust. They went to Dubai." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "I'll be at your apartment in 20 minutes, she said. "And I'm bringing the files." Aunt Linda arrived with a worn briefcase. "Your mother," she said, her face grim as she sat at my small kitchen table, "was a brilliant woman. She loved your father, but she wasn't blind. She knew he was impulsive, and she knew Karen was a leech before he even married her." She opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick, bound document. "This is the original trust agreement. I'm the secondary executor, which is why I have a copy. Robert is the primary. We spent the next hour reading through the legal jargon. My mother had been meticulous. The trust was funded by her own family's inheritance and her life insurance. The money was to be used for two things, my education and the annual family enrichment vacation. My father was given control to manage the funds, but he was not entitled to use the principal for personal or business expenses. "He can't just take the money, Elena," Linda said, pointing to a clause. "It requires dual sign, not for any withdrawal over $10,000. 00 that isn't for tuition or the specified travel he needs. Oh no, what? I asked. She pointed to the second signature line. He needs the signature of the secondary executor, me, but he hasn't asked me for a signature in over a year. I felt a cold dread. How much is in the trust? There should be around $200 left, she said. Not including the separate college fund, which you've already used. I grabbed my laptop. Aunt Linda, what's the name of the bank that holds the trust? She told me. I logged into my own account at the same bank. My father, in a rare moment of transparency years ago, had linked my account to the trust so I could see the balance. He probably forgot he'd done it. I clicked the tab. The balance wasn't $200,000. It was $1,430. 12. I think I stopped breathing. Linda, it's gone. It's all gone. She looked at the screen, her face turning pale. That's impossible. No, I said, my voice hardening. It's due. Bye. I clicked on the statements, a tab. For the past 18 months, there was a series of large withdrawals. $20,000 series of large withdrawals. $20,000 here. $30,000 there. None of them had Linda's signature. I looked closer. They weren't just withdrawals. They were wire transfers. Transfers made to R&R Contracting, my father's failing business, but there were other more recent charges. $45,000 charge from a luxury travel agency, $22,000 wire to a high-end car rental service in the UAE. A string of purchases from designer boutiques. He hadn't just used the money for a vacation. He had systematically emptied my mother's trust to fund his failing business and his new wife's lavish lifestyle. He had stolen my inheritance. He's been funding Mark's career. I whispered, connecting the dots, the new guitars, the studio equipment. It was all from the trust, and this vacation. Linda said, her voice shaking with rage, was just them spending the last of it. They told you no because there wasn't enough for you to go after they'd bled it dry. They were spending the scraps. A new charge, posted just yesterday, caught my eye. $15,000 charge to due by Sands Resort Penthouse Services. He forged your signature, didn't he? I asked, looking up at her. Aunt Linda's eyes met mine, and they were like steel. He must have. For every single transfer to his business, he committed fraud, Alina, multiple felonies. I took a screenshot of the bank statement. I downloaded every single transaction from the last 2 years. I saved copies of Mark's Instagram posts and Karen's videos. They think I'm just a tired resident, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. They think I'm too busy and too weak to fight back. What are you going to do? Linda asked. I'm a doctor, I said, closing the laptop. I'm trained to be meticulous, to work under pressure, and to cut out a sickness before it kills the patient. My family is very, very sick. The next morning, I wasn't at the hospital. I was in the office of a forensic accountant, a man Aunt Linda had recommended. He was sharp, quiet, and expensive. I paid his retainer with my emergency savings, the money I'd set aside for a down payment on a condo. It felt like a worthy investment. This is. Blatant, Mr. Harrison, the accountant, said after just 30 minutes of reviewing the documents I'd brought. The wire transfers to his personal business are a clear breach of fiduciary duty, and if your aunt's signature was forged, well, that's criminal. I need 2 things, I said. First, I need a complete, undeniable audit trail of every dollar he stole. Second, I need to know what's left. Left of the trust, you said it was $1,400. He replied, no. I said, left of him, I want to know about his business, his assets, Karen's assets, everything. He didn't just steal from a bank account. He stole from my mother. I want to know what he has that I can take back. Mr. Harrison gave me a thin, appreciative smile. I'll have a preliminary report in 48 hours. While he worked, Aunt Linda and I went to see a lawyer. She was a powerhouse specializing in trust and estate litigation. She listened to our story, reviewed the trust document, and looked at the bank statements. This is a slam dunk case, the lawyer, M.S. Diaz, said. We can file an emergency petition to freeze the trust account immediately, not that there's much to freeze. Then, we file a suit for breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, and fraud. We'll also file a police report regarding the forgeries. What will happen to him? Linda asked, her voice quiet. Best case for him, he's forced to liquidate every asset he has to pay back the trust, plus damages. Worst case, jail time. Forgery and elder financial abuse. Even though you're not an elder, the misuse of a trust falls under similar statutes are serious. I thought of my father laughing in the steakhouse. I thought of Mark mocking me from a penthouse. I want to pursue every single option. I said, the first step was to get control. As the primary beneficiary and with the secondary executor Linda on my side, we filed the emergency motion. A judge, seeing the blatant transfers and Mark's incriminating social media posts, signed it within hours. The trust was frozen. Next, MS Diaz filed a lis pendens against my father's house. This is a legal notice that the property is under dispute. He couldn't sell it or take a loan against it. The house, I'd learned, was purchased using a $50,000 down payment that came directly from the trust just after he married Karen. Mr. Harrison's report came back. R&R Contracting was a shell. It was insolvent, drowning in debt. The trust money hadn't been invested in it. It had been spent by it. My father had been paying his personal credit cards, Karen's car lease, and Mark's rent, all through the business. The final beautiful, terrible piece of the puzzle was the house. My father had bought out my mother's share of their original home years ago. But the new house, the one he shared with Karen, had been bought with stolen money. They're due back in 3 days. I told MS Diaz and Aunt Linda, who are now my official war counsel. Good. MS Diaz said, a shark smile on her face. Let them have one last good night's sleep. I booked the private dining room at the same steakhouse. I sent a text to my father, Karen, and Mark, family meeting, back room at the Capitol Grill, 7 p.m. sharp, it's urgent. My dad, probably still riding high from his trip, replied, can't wait, hope you're rested up, Alina. When Aunt Linda and I arrived, MS Diaz and Mr. Harrison were already there, seated. The table was set for 6. We had water while we waited. My family waltzed in at 7:15, all of them tan, wearing new, expensive clothes. Karen was carrying a designer handbag I immediately recognized from one of her posts. Elena, Linda, my father boomed, sliding into the booth. What's all this, and who are your friends? Karen and Mark sat down, looking bored. Yeah, Elena, what's so urgent? Karen asked, pulling out a compact to check her lipstick. I have so much unpacking to do. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. Hello, Robert, Karen, Mark. I'm glad you had a wonderful vacation. You all look relaxed. Oh, it was divine, Karen said. Dubai is just magical. You really should have come, Alina. Yes, I said about that. I'd like to introduce my colleagues. This is MS Diaz, my attorney, and this is Mr. Harrison, my forensic accountant. The change in the air was instant. My father's smile froze. Karen's compact snapped shut. What is this, Elena? A joke? Robert sputtered. That's what I thought. I said, my voice perfectly level, when you laughed at me at this very table, when I was told the family vacation was scaled back. But it wasn't, was it? I slid a file across the table. This is a photo of you, Mark, in the penthouse suite in Dubai. This is a video of you, Karen, bragging about how I was paying for it, and this. I slid a second, thicker file, is a complete audit from Mr. Harrison, detailing the $248,569. 88 you, Dad, have stolen from my mother's trust over the last 2 years. Robert turned white. Karen let out a small gasp. You've been funding your failed business. I continued, paying for Karen's car, Mark's rent, and this obscene vacation, all with money my mother left for me. You told me the trust was tight. You lied. Alina, honey, it's a misunderstanding. My father stammered, reaching for my hand. I pulled it back. Don't, MS Diaz. MS Diaz stood up, placing a legal document in front of my father. Mr. Robert, you have been served. This is a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and conversion. As of this morning, all your personal and business accounts are frozen pending a full audit. We have also filed a lis pendens on your home as it was purchased with stolen trust funds. You can't do that, Karen shrieked. That's our house. It was my mother's money. I snapped, my voice finally rising, and you. I looked at my dad. You didn't just breach your duty. You committed a crime, Aunt Linda. Linda, who had been silent, spoke. Robert, I filed a police report this afternoon for the multiple forgeries of my signature on the withdrawal slips. The district attorney's office is very interested in your case. My father looked like he'd been punched. Mark was staring at the table, his face ashen. You're sending me to jail. My dad whispered, I'm taking back what's mine. I said, MS Diaz has a settlement offer, or you can take your chances in criminal court. It's your choice. MS Diaz laid out the terms. You will sign over the house to Dr. Alina, as its value is roughly equivalent to the principal you stole. You will liquidate your business, and all proceeds will go to repaying the interest and damages. Karen, that new car and handbag are to be returned, or their value will be added to the suit. Mark, you will get a job and begin repaying the $32,000 in personal expenses and career investments you received. If you agree, Dr. Elena will ask the D. A. To consider your cooperation when reviewing the forgery charges. You have 24 hours. My father stared at the paper. Karen was openly sobbing. I stood up. I'm done. I don't want a souvenir. I want my inheritance. Enjoy your dinner. I placed a $100 bill on the table for the water. Aunt Linda and I walked out, leaving MS. Diaz and Mr. Harrison to watch them implode. They signed, of course they signed. Faced with an ironclad fraud case and the very real possibility of prison, my father folded completely. The aftermath was messy, like clearing rubble after a building's demolition. My father had to sell his business for parts. It was worth almost nothing, but it was symbolic. The house, Karen's prized possession, was signed over to me. I had the locks changed the same day. Karen left him. Without the money and the house, the love of his life vanished, presumably to find her next target. Mark was forced to sell his expensive equipment and move into a tiny studio apartment. I see him sometimes, working at a coffee shop near the hospital. He doesn't make eye contact, my father. He's broken. He lives in a small rental, works for another contractor, and is, for the first time in his life, truly on his own. He's tried to call. He leaves long, rambling voicemails about family and forgiveness. And how your mother would have wanted. I never listened to them. My mother would have wanted me to be strong, to protect myself, and to honor her legacy, and I did. I sold the house. It felt tainted, full of their lies. With the proceeds, I paid my lawyers, set up a new, secure trust fund managed by Aunt Linda, and I finally put a down payment on my own condo. It's small, but it's mine. Last week, I took my first real vacation. I went to Florence, a place my mother always wanted to take me. I went with Aunt Linda. We ate pasta, looked at art, and drank wine in a sunny piazza. I thought about my father, but it wasn't with anger. It was just nothing. He's a stranger I used to know. I'm still a resident, still working long hours. But when I come home, it's to a place of peace, a life I built, funded by a future I secured for myself. They thought I was just a tired, overworked girl they could steal from. They forgot I'm a surgeon. I know exactly how to cut out a sickness, and I know exactly where to make the cut.